The congressional chamber buzzed with tension as Reverend Marjorie Taylor Greene leaned forward, her voice laced with mockery. "Maybe if your mother raised you right, you wouldn't be so loud," she snapped. Gasps echoed around the room. Everyone knew MTG crossed a line. Attacking a fellow congresswoman was one thing, but dragging her mother into it? That was a new low. Jasmine Crockett's eyes narrowed as she clicked on her microphone. The room fell to an uneasy silence. Jasmine stood slowly, adjusting her blazer with calm precision. "Let me make something crystal clear," she began. Her voice wasn't raised, but it vibrated with strength. "My mother is a retired school teacher who worked 2 jobs to keep our lights on. You do not speak her name unless it's with respect." The room held its breath. MTG rolled her eyes, but even her usual allies looked stunned by the gravity of what was unfolding. "She raised 5 kids in a broken system, in a country where women like her are rarely seen and never heard," Jasmine continued. "But today, you heard her through me." Her voice hit like thunder. MTG attempted to speak, but Jasmine cut her off. "You started this," she said with sharp calm, "and now I finish it." Murmurs rippled. Phones lit up. Social media exploded in real time. The moment was already going viral. MTG tried to regain control, forcing a laugh. "It's not personal, just politics." Jasmine's face didn't flinch. "You made it personal the moment you invoked the name of a woman you'll never match in strength, sacrifice, or soul." The atmosphere grew heavier. Even C-SPAN commentators paused. This wasn't just rebuttal, it was transformation. Jasmine wasn't defending her mother. She was elevating her to mythic stature. "While you peddled conspiracies, my mother graded papers by candlelight. While you chased cameras, she chased hope for her students," Jasmine said. Her voice was firm, her delivery immaculate. The gallery above began to nod. A staffer near MTG lowered their head, embarrassed. The tables were turning fast, and yet Jasmine never once raised her voice. The power was in her poise, and everyone felt it. "My mother didn't need a platform to shape lives," Jasmine continued. "She had chalk, compassion, and grit. And that's more than I can say for certain elected officials who mock real struggle." MTG bit her lip. The room shifted uncomfortably. No one wanted to look at her. Jasmine's mother sat quietly in the gallery, tears glistening. She had no idea she'd become a national figure that morning. Jasmine turned briefly to the gallery, catching her mother's eye. "I fight like this because of you," she said, her voice softening slightly. The crowd didn't applaud. This wasn't theater. It was truth, raw and undeniable. One congressman muttered to his neighbor, "She just made history." MTG sat still, her usual fire reduced to a flicker. The silence spoke volumes. Jasmine wasn't done yet. "This chamber should be sacred," Jasmine said, sweeping her gaze across the room. "But some treat it like a circus. They trade decency for sound bites and insult mothers who gave everything for this nation's future." Her words hit every seat like a sledgehammer. Reporters tweeted in all caps. Commentators were already calling it one of the most powerful speeches ever delivered live. MTG leaned into her mic again, but her voice wavered. "You're just playing the victim," Jasmine replied instantly. "No, ma'am. I'm honoring the hero. And if that threatens you, that says more about your character than mine." The room held its breath again. This was no longer a debate. It was a reckoning, and Jasmine had seized it with unwavering dignity. "Next time you think about dragging someone's mother into your petty games," Jasmine said, voice steady, "remember that some of us were raised by women who built character, not chaos." The air was heavy. Even MTG's usual defenders stayed silent. They knew. Everyone knew. Jasmine Crockett hadn't just won an argument. She had won the soul of the room. Outside, Twitter blazed. Jemima Crockett was trending globally. Celebrities, athletes, and politicians shared clips of Jasmine's words. "This is leadership," one post read. "MTG tried to play dirty," and "got buried in truth." Even major networks cut to live coverage. Jasmine had become a household name by defending the woman who gave her strength. In the post-hearing hallway, a reporter asked Jasmine, "Did you plan that?" She smiled. "No, but I was prepared, because my mother taught me never to let anyone speak over me, or those I love." Her mother emerged beside her quietly, hand in hand. Cameras flashed. No words were needed. That image alone told America everything they needed to know. Back inside the chamber, MTG left through a side door. No comments, no press, just silence. Her staff looked rattled. She had made headlines, but not the kind she wanted. Her attack had backfired spectacularly. And in trying to humiliate, she had been humiliated, not by insults, but by the calm force of real respect and lived truth. Pundits compared the moment to political mic drops of the past. Jasmine Crockett may have just set the new gold standard for congressional clapbacks, one said on air. But it wasn't about roasting, it was about rising. And in that rise, Jasmine brought every struggling parent, every overlooked teacher, and every resilient woman with her. On The View, co-hosts teared up while replaying the clip. "That mother raised a warrior," one said. "I wish more politicians spoke with that kind of heart." Late-night hosts praised her composure. Even political rivals gave her credit. The contrast was undeniable. Jasmine wasn't playing a part. She was living a purpose. Days later, a children's book author tweeted, "I'm naming my next character after Jasmine's mom." Thousands liked the post. People were inspired, not just by the clapback, but by the love behind it. Jasmine had reminded America that strength comes not from power, but from principle. And sometimes it's the quietest people who shape the loudest voices. Community leaders invited Jasmine to speak at graduation ceremonies. Nonprofits reached out to her mother asking if she'd consider visiting schools. "We need more Mama Crockett's," one email read. The moment had transcended politics. It had become a movement of respect, resilience, and redefinition. Jasmine released a statement days later. "I didn't speak to score points. I spoke to protect the woman who shaped me, and to demand that this chamber return to civility and substance. Our mothers deserve that much." It was shared over 1 million times. The message rang deeper than applause. It hit America's conscience. MTG's polling dipped. Donors privately expressed concern. Her soundbite strategy had backfired. Even those aligned with her ideologies admitted she'd gone too far. Jasmine's restraint had been her weapon, and in using it, she didn't just silence a voice, she shifted a narrative. Teachers across the country sent letters to Jasmine and her mother. One read, "We often go unnoticed. Thank you for making us visible." Jasmine responded personally to each one. It wasn't just politics, it was healing. Her mother's quiet work was finally honored, and with it, the quiet work of millions more. Commentators called it the moment that redefined modern congressional discourse. But to Jasmine, it was simpler than that. "That was just my mama," she told an interviewer, "and if you come for her, you better come correct." The line was quoted nationwide. Mama Crockett had become a symbol of quiet, undeniable strength. College. Professors played the clip in ethics classes. "This is what integrity looks like," one said. "Truth without arrogance. Defense without destruction." The classroom was silent, transfixed. Young minds learned not from textbooks, but from truth spoken in real time. Journalists begged for interviews. Jasmine declined most. "This moment isn't about me," she explained. "It's about what we allow in our discourse and what we're no longer willing to accept." Her refusal to gloat only amplified her power. She didn't need to speak further. The world was already listening. At home, her mother sat in her modest living room, watching replays on TV. Neighbors dropped off flowers. Kids from her old school sent cards. She smiled quietly, hands folded in her lap. She was always the fierce one, she said about Jasmine. All I did was love her right. Jasmine returned to work as usual. No fanfare, no grand gestures, just purpose. Her colleagues gave her knowing nods. The hearing was over, but the echo remained. People would remember that moment not for the insult, but for the strength that followed. It became a benchmark for grace under fire. Memorial murals went up in schools across the country featuring quotes from the speech. Jasmine visited one, in Texas, placing a hand on the wall. "She taught me to speak," she whispered. Behind her, students clapped. In that moment, a lesson had come full circle. MTG eventually made a statement, vague and deflective. "I stand by my words." But no one paid attention. The story had already moved on. Jasmine Crockett had reshaped the narrative. She didn't seek revenge, she taught respect, and in doing so, she won hearts. In the years that followed, the moment was referenced in books, documentaries, and even presidential speeches. "The day a daughter stood for her mother," one headline read. "And the country stood still too. Listen!" Jasmine's voice was etched in history. When asked how she stayed so calm under pressure, Jasmine replied, "Because I didn't carry anger. I carried love. And love doesn't shout. It silences." The quote became famous. Teachers printed it on classroom walls. Mothers wrote it in journals. Students memorized it. MTG tried to humiliate Jasmine Crockett's mother. But what happened? Instead was unforgettable. Jasmine's strength silenced the room, uplifted a nation, and honored every mother who ever sacrificed in silence. And in that moment, America saw what real power looks like.